This is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Glad you're with us tonight. It's Tuesday, September 1st. We're entering a new month. So welcome to September. We're still talking about the coronavirus, though. Tonight we are talking about the ongoing challenges for workers, especially essential workers, people who have to go into the workplace and are exposed to the coronavirus more often than those who can work from home. What are the options for those workers should they get sick, whether it's workers' compensation, lawsuits? Of course, there was just a whole legislative session that really took away a lot of the ability of people to sue should they get sick in the workplace. So we're going to talk about that. What are the options for workers? I'm very happy to have with us, as we do now, via Zoom, Patrick Green. He is president of the Amalgamated Transit Union. So, Mr. Green, thank you for being with us.
Pleasure to be here with you.
And so, Amalgamated Transit Union, what is the Amalgamated Transit Union?
So the Amalgamated Transit Union, we represent what I like to call the silent heroes here in this city. We represent the men and women who operate the buses and provide the maintenance for our public transit system here. WeGo, formerly known as MTA.
And how many workers is that?
So currently right now, we represent a little over 550 employees. That does not include the administrative personnel. These are actually the frontline workers that you see every day.
And so these are people that are not working from home, right? They're not able to work from home. They've been coming into work, for the most part, the entire pandemic. Is that right?
Absolutely. We have been, in fact, declared as essential workers by this city, so we essentially don't have a choice.
And what have you found? How many have gotten sick? How concerned are workers? Kind of what are you seeing?
So right now, what we know, of course, the reporting is kind of skewed because they don't want to really share the numbers with us. But my numbers show around 40 employees that have been infected and treated for the COVID virus. Our members and our employees are very scared because what you have to think about is if we are running a number, a lower number, such as 10 to 12,000 daily riders, then each individual employee can come into contact with as many as 500 to 1,000 passengers. And so that makes it very difficult. And when we congregate, I believe that we provide the potential to be in a super spreader type situation.
So what is the answer there? I mean, some might say we should shut down transit. I wouldn't think you want that. What is the answer?
So part of the answers are barriers, optional protective barriers, which we've been advocates of. But what they also do is they provide some protection from the operator versus the passenger. We do need our passengers to wear a mask. You would be surprised at how many people that actually refuse to wear a mask. I'll tell you a quick story. I have an operator right now who is still on bereavement leave. She obtained the COVID virus, took it home to her husband, and her husband did not survive. And so she spends every day now believing that it is her fault that her husband is no longer here.
And I don't know that I would be surprised when you tell me people refuse to wear masks, because we hear about it a lot on this show. People are reluctant to wear masks. And so what authority, power do drivers have if somebody gets on the bus and says, no, I'm not wearing a mask?
Essentially, we have none. We are held to the standard of the Metro order to where the employees must wear a mask because it does identify public transit as a whole. But when we have bus operators who are out on the streets that sometimes can literally be miles away from a safe location, we're subject to whatever the dispatcher says and how long it may take the police to get there if they choose that it is important enough for them to come.
Has any of your drivers called the police? Has that happened?
At this point, it hasn't happened at this point, but we do notify our dispatch office to let them know that we have passengers that are refusing to wear the mask. And a lot of times we get the typical response, go ahead and bring them downtown and we'll talk to them when they get here.
And how often does that happen? Is it once a day, twice a day? How often does that happen? All the time?
It happens all the time. It is daily. It is daily.
So, all right. So your people are out there. You think 40 or so have gotten sick. What options do they have once they get sick?
So we do have a few options here that are fairly decent. This company will allow you to take 14 days, and they will pay for those 14 days as long as the virus contracted in the workplace or a family member contracted the virus. But those days are changing because, as you know, if you follow CDC guidelines, they have changed constantly. So we don't know when the transmission period takes place, and so they want to take that into account. And while they attempt to do the best they can, but our people are not medical professionals.
So what do you think about what's been done in the legislature recently as far as limiting the liability of I guess, toward employers, not only of employees' ability to sue, but also, I guess, people who come into a business? But what do you think about some of this liability limitation?
Well, I think it's really sad for the working public and the essential employees that we have. When you determine that we are essential employees and we're essential to this city and that we have to come to work, we don't have a choice. If we don't have the sick time to take, if we don't have the necessary tools that they kind of use in the toolkit, at some point I have to come to work and I have to expose myself. And we have underlying health conditions just like everybody else, and our family members have underlying health conditions. And I can assure you that we would have employees that would like to hold our system accountable for the position that we've been placed in.
And when you say have to come to work, that is because at this point, if you refuse to work, you would not get unemployment, right? So that means you basically quit. If you're worried about your health, you would have to quit with no unemployment. TOSHA, can you call TOSHA? Do you have any options there?
So we can call TOSHA, but there is not really any enforcement ability for TOSHA. And we have a unique attendance system. It is a 10-point system. The only excuse that is acceptable is FMLA. So anytime you take a day off, whether you have sick time or not, you get 10 times in a rolling 12-month calendar. And that can go fairly quickly, especially during a pandemic.
And what about using workers' compensation? So you've had several get sick. I think you said 40 again. 40 have gotten sick. Were any of them able to apply for and receive workers' compensation?
Not at this point. Workers' compensation has not been an option.
And what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's terrible. It is something that we contract in what we do, likely on the job, but we can find several excuses, and companies can find several excuses to say that we can't actually prove that you got it on the job.
Have they tried to go through that process and been denied? Have you tried to have your workers go through that process? They're denied because they say, well, they could have gotten it at church, or they could have gotten it, I don't know, I shouldn't have said church, wherever. They could have gotten it some other place. When in fact, right, what your people are doing is they're driving people around. There are lots of people there on a bus. It would make sense that that puts them at risk. But I guess, okay, so have you tried to put workers through that process to actually apply for workers' comp and see what happens?
So currently right now, we have not tried to put someone on workman's comp. we have the toughest workman compensation laws, in my opinion, in the country. So getting regular workman's comp is difficult enough for us, for a slip and a fall or an injury for a knee. So we know the difficulty that this proposes for us.
Now, I'm looking at some information here, and it says Tennessee is among the states that list occupational diseases as potentially covered injuries. And I believe they've listed COVID as an occupational disease. Is that right? So it seems like that would open the door for if a worker were to contract it, they could potentially get covered. Is that right?
That is correct, but it has to happen on the job. And it is something that has to be identified as happening on the job. And if you can't get the company's doctor to say that you contracted the virus on the job, it's not going to do you any good.
Mm-hmm. So is that an area that you'll be hoping to change, that you're kind of fighting to change, or what do you hope happens here going forward?
So going forward, what we will attempt to do, at least on our end, is it is language that we would attempt to add in our collective bargaining agreement, so that in the future and going forward, we have mechanisms and triggers in place, so that we don't leave it up to a third party to decide whether the company should continue compensation for the employees.
All right, well, this kind of sets the table for our discussion. I see Mike is on the line. Mike, hold on. And if others want to call in, we're going to take a break right now, but there is the number, at the bottom of the screen, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Give us a call. What do you think about all this? We'll take a break. Be back right after this.